The chandeliers at the DeSoto threw stars across the floor, and for a heartbeat, Savannah forgot to breathe. A flash, another. Then Emily's voice cut through the strings. "My ring," she cried. "My ring, it's gone." Laughter thinned. Conversation folded shut. 200 eyes slid toward me. Linda Matthews' widow teacher, small in navy silk. Emily's gaze fixed like a spotlight. "Maybe it slipped into your purse," Mom sweetly said the way a match speaks to paper. I set my flute down. "If you're accusing me, Emily," I said, hearing my late husband's bench voice in my own, "we'll do it properly. And because the truth deserves its full runway, let me take you back to where the fuse began." A year after their wedding, joy had become routine. I'd traded our big house for a federal-style cottage on Whitaker, a piazza wide enough for 2 rockers and an evening's worth of talk. Neighbors called it downshifting. Gracefully, which in our city means she knows who she is. Daniel and Emily lived 12 minutes away behind eager brick columns. Their renovation startup was real enough to pay bills and pretty enough to photograph. Emily curated the brand. Daniel ran the cruise. "Mom, you're always so traditional," Emily would sing honey over vinegar. "We're trying something fresher." In public, she said Mom. On Mondays, she said Linda. I'd taught long enough to know how sweetness can bruise. One Sunday in their Whitestone kitchen, she nudged my place setting 2 inches. "There," she said brightly, "centered." Daniel kissed my head while checking a text. He has his father's gentleness without his spine. "Mom, the Gala RSVPs look good. We might get the mayor." "Savannah Hart's Gala," Emily said, tasting the title. "We're sponsoring the auction. I'm chairing. It'll be everything." The gala funds the literacy lights under which my former students still read. I'd given for a decade quietly. I wanted pages turning more than plaques. "That program matters," I said. "If you need help, ask." "You've done so much already," she smiled, a flutter between us, gratitude posing as dismissal. "We'll put you at the donors table." Later, to the caterer within earshot, we'll have a classic option for Mrs. Matthews, nothing too adventurous. At the garden club, she parted peonies for a circle of matrons. "See the space at the center," she said. "Negative space elevates everything." A week later, tugging my chair back an inch, she murmured the same phrase, soft enough to pass for air, sharp enough to cut. "I am not crystal. I did not crack, but I noticed." Most of all, I noticed her eyes. She smiled like a daughter, forehead, soft mouth, generous, but her eyes said she was done pretending. Storms have a moment when they stop bluffing. You smell iron before the first drop. The first drop was the seating chart. Calligraphy in columns, my name tucked at the aisle end of the donors' table, a polite exile. "You'll be more comfortable there," she wrote. "Less traffic." The mayor's wife sat with Emily's influencer friends. It wasn't war, it was placement. "You'll be fine," Daniel said when I asked privately why I'd been moved from the women who built the thing before Emily learned the word gala. "Em's got a vision. It matters to her." "It matters to me, too." He nodded as if he'd heard me. A nod is not a promise. So I saved my piece, the kind you keep until it cuts. I saved it while Emily messaged vendors without me. I saved it when she told a camera legacy, and moving forward we're bringing fresh energy. And I saved it when I overheard her tell a friend over iced coffee tonight. People will finally see she's not as graceful as they think. Grace is not an act. It's a decision you make before anyone tests it. The week of the gala, I had my dress steamed, my hair set, my resolve placed where it would do the most good. My husband, had he been here, would have told me to listen. He could turn a room into a witness stand without raising his voice. That afternoon, I drove past Forsyth Park, parked beneath live oaks that had watched us dance decades ago, and breathed lemon and old wood. In the DeSoto's lobby, volunteers buzzed. I signed the donor book, L. Matthews, and accepted a program. Emily appeared fresh as frosting in a gown built to be remembered. "Mom," she said, air-kissing the air, "you look classic." "Thank you," I said. "You look like a budget line that took the stairs." She laughed as if I'd meant to be funny, squeezed my forearm and pointed me to the aisle seat. Then she turned to a photographer. "Legacy donors like Linda make nights like this possible." I smiled for the flash. When my eyes cleared, a young server slid close enough to be a whisper, placed a folded note by my plate and murmured, "Ma'am, read this." Quietly. The handwriting was a brave scrawl. "There's a diamond ring in your purse." I saw. My heartbeat did not change. I slid the note under my napkin and lifted my water. Across the room, Emily touched her throat and scanned the tables, as if counting blessings. Her eyes found me and stayed. She smiled in that trained way, and the camera agreed. Grace, I reminded myself, is geometry, how you stand when the wave rises. So when the music slipped a step and a voice I knew too well cut the room. My ring. I was already upright. Purse. Zipped hands folded. When Emily's accusation found me like a spotlight, I stood without making the chair bark. I looked at my son, whose eyes begged this to be a misunderstanding. I looked at the server who would keep his courage if I lent him mine. Then I looked at the woman who had practiced mom for a year like a victory. "If you're accusing me," "Emily," I said, letting my husband's steadiness step fully into my voice, "we'll do it properly." The DeSoto's ballroom wore its best manners, magnolia at the door's strings, under the chandelier linen, neat as a sentence that knows where it's going. Emily moved through the room as if she'd rehearsed everyone's steps, volunteers, donors, even the cameras. She'd placed me at the aisle end of the donors' table, perfect for an exit and useless for a conversation. Joyce Caldwell, the mayor's wife, caught my eye and gave the knowing nod Southern women exchange over bad seating charts. Daniel drifted by in the easy current of young men learning to be photographed. "You comfortable, Mom?" "Comfort is mostly posture," I said. He smiled, not quite hearing, and kept moving. On my way to the ladies' room, I cut behind a column where staff flowed like a practiced tide. Emily leaned toward a headset woman with a tablet. Bracelets chimed like a cue. "Keep the camera wide," Emily whispered. "When I go to the donors' table, follow. Tonight, people will finally see she's not as graceful as they think." The woman's eyes flicked to me, then away. I washed my hands and looked at myself in the mirror's honest light. Grace isn't a performance, it's a discipline. Lipstick steady, shoulders level. Back at my place, my purse weighted small, black, zipped. A tall server slid close enough to be a whisper, laid a folded note by my plate, and said, "Ma'am, read this," quietly. The scrawl was young and sure of what it had seen. "There's a diamond ring in your purse." I saw. My heartbeat didn't change. I eased the note beneath my napkin and lifted my water. The server lingered half a breath. "What's your name?" I asked softly. "Ben." "Thank you, Ben. Stay nearby." Across the room, Emily glided, laughing, touching sleeves, collecting content. She drifted behind my chair to wave at the mayor's table. In the glass of a donor plaque, I saw her lean, fast, feline, and disengaged wrists too quick for innocence. The purse didn't move. The room did. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC called our chair, Mrs. Emily Matthews. Applause rose. Emily's smile stretched camera-wide. "Savannah Hearts is about legacy," she said, "and the courage to evolve." Her gaze skimmed me and kept going. She thanked board mayor volunteers, then the line meant for the lens, "A particular donor whose quiet strength inspires us, Linda Matthews." The camera found me. I smiled like the end of a hymn. When the quartet returned to Cole Porter, Emily floated to the donors' table with the photographer 2 steps behind. She touched the back of my chair so lightly it might have been a blessing. "Mom," she said brightly, "are you comfortable?" "Entirely." "Good." She moved on bracelets, whispering. Dinner arrived in a practiced ballet. Conversation braided and separated. I held the idea of the purse the way you hold a thought you're not ready to set down. Joyce leaned in. "You all right?" "Better than that." Ben surfaced with a pitcher. "Water, ma'am." When he poured, his voice rode the river between glass and ear. "I'm right here." "Good," I said without looking at him. Across the room, Emily checked her lipstick in a spoon. Daniel clapped a sponsor on the shoulder. The pledge chair flashed totals that would become books and lights and a child's first page. I was proud of my city. I am never not. Late in dinner, Emily touched the hollow of her throat the way a woman does when she wants the room's attention before she asks for it. Her brows knit, her hand searched, her body found the angle that photographs well. She rose at table 6, color draining on cue. "My ring," she said, letting the word clip cleanly across china. "My grandmother's diamond ring, it's gone." The music fell out of itself. Talk paused mid-syllable. Chandeliers trembled in the floor's polish. The tablet woman lifted her device. The photographer found the frame he'd dreamed of. Emily scanned the room as if it had taken something from her. Her gaze pinned me with sorority accuracy. "Maybe it slipped into your purse, Mom." She made the mom big enough for everyone to hear. I placed my napkin on the linen, stood without scraping the chair, and let the silence measure me. "If you're accusing me, Emily," I said, steady as a bench, "will do it properly." A hush traveled outward like a tide taking sand. The quartet's bows hovered. Servers froze, then remembered to breathe. I motioned to the MC for the spare mic. Procedure is a kindness. It gives frightened people something to hold. First, I said to Emily, "You'll describe exactly what you lost metal setting stone count, when you last felt it on your hand, and where. Then we'll search with witnesses. If nothing is found, you'll apologize here now. If you still believe a theft occurred, we'll call the police together." She blinked, then reassembled her confidence for the camera. "Platinum band," she said. 3 stones, old mine cuts. I wore it during dinner at table 6, noticed it missing as they cleared the main course. "Good," I said. "Witnesses." I nodded to Joyce, who rose without being asked, to the floor manager, who appeared as if summoned by a union rule, and to Ben, who stepped forward with his courage buttoned. I placed my purse at the center of the table. "We won't move it again. We won't touch it unless all see. Voice is civil." I turned the opening toward Emily and stepped back. "Go ahead." She reached in, laying items out one by one as if narrating her vindication: lipstick, compact tissues, phone keys, receipts, mints. The room leaned. The purse remained an ordinary vowel on a sentence of linen. "May I check the lining?" she asked, smiling thinly. Slowly, Joyce said. Emily pinched the silk at the seam and tugged it outward. Nothing flashed. Confidence stepped back an inch. Panic tested the hem. "Ben," I said, giving him a place to stand, "would you repeat what you told me so everyone may hear?" He swallowed, then found his voice. "I saw Mrs. Emily lean over your chair when you were speaking to the mayor's wife," he said. "Something small and shiny fell from her hand into your purse." I wrote the note. A ripple passed through the room. The tablet woman's device dipped, then rose duty, winning over decency by a thread. "That's ridiculous," Emily snapped, polish peeling at the edges. "We're taking a server's word." "A witness's word," I said evenly. "Now turn the lining fully outward so we can all see it's clean." Her hands trembled. She inverted the lining with a snap, and physics did what truth does when given a stage. The ring fell. It kissed the linen and rolled the width of a prayer card before consenting to stop. Light touched it and made it speak. Emily stared mouth, unable to find a verb. Daniel hovered at the circle's edge, face of a boy who'd found out the test was oral. Around us, people exhaled the breath they didn't know they'd been saving. I let the facts hang a heartbeat longer. Then quietly, "You wanted everyone to see something, Emily. I hope they did." It wasn't the kind of line that begs applause, and yet it earned it hesitant, at first, then growing the sound people make when relief and recognition arrive together. I gathered my purse and shawl. "If you still believe a theft occurred, I offered the room. We can call the police now." "No," Emily said too fast. "It's fine." "Then there's another matter," I said. "Your apology, here." She looked at the ring as if it might speak for her. "I'm sorry," she managed, "for accusing you." A pause, a swallow. "For planning to." I nodded, record not absolution, and placed the ring in her palm with a folded napkin. "Be careful with what you hide," I said. "It finds daylight." Sound returned to the room, a teaspoon at a time. I thanked Joyce with a glance, Ben with a low "well done," and walked toward the corridor's cooler air. And from that moment, I tell you now, I stopped being her mother-in-law and became her reckoning. Silence isn't empty. It's a stage reset. The quartet's bows hovered. Servers froze mid-step. 200 people leaned into a single question. What happens to a woman who refuses to be small? We'll do it properly, I said, taking the spare mic from the MC. I didn't raise my voice. I widened it so it could include the people in the back and the one holding the camera. First procedure. I faced Emily. Describe exactly what you lost metal setting stones, when you last felt it on your hand, where you were. She blinked, then assembled confidence like makeup. Platinum band, 3 stones old mine cuts. I wore it during dinner at table 6. I noticed it missing as they cleared the main course. Good, I said. Witnesses. I nodded to Joyce Caldwell, up at once to the floor manager arriving with unflustered spine, and to the young server who had given me his nerve. Your name? Ben, ma'am. 21 tall in a way he hadn't grown into yet. Thank you, Ben. Stay. I set my purse in the center of our table, a black comma in a sentence that was not yet finished. We won't move it again. We won't touch it unless we all see. Voices civil. Emily search. She reached in with bracelets whispering like stage directions. One by one, she laid out my small Life lipstick compact tissues, phone keys, receipts, mints. Each object made a little sound against the linen, the sound of a room taking inventory of a woman. May I check the lining? She asked, brightness thinning. Slowly, Joyce said neutral as law. Emily pinched the silk and tugged it outward. Nothing flashed. Confidence stepped back an inch. Panic trod its hem. She found the inner pocket and opened it. Still nothing. The camera shifted, hungry for a different story. I gave the room a place to stand. Ben, I said, tell them what you told me. He swallowed, squared. I saw Mrs. Emily lean over Mrs. Matthews' chair when she spoke to the mayor's wife. Something small and shiny fell from her hand into the purse. I wrote the note. The ripple began near the board table and moved out a pond, remembering a stone. The tablet woman's device dipped and rose again, duty winning by a thread. A donor I'd taught as a girl clasped her hands and stared at the little pile of objects as if they might spell a word. That's ridiculous, Emily said, Polish peeling at the edges. We're taking a server's word. A witness's, I said, even. Now turn the lining fully outward so we can all see it's clean. Her fingers trembled only a little, but in a room like this, a little is a headline. She inverted the lining with a snap. The ring fell. Not a crash, only a small, articulate kiss of platinum against linen. It rolled the width of a prayer card and stopped in light that made it pronounce itself. The quartet forgot to breathe. Daniel stood at the circle's edge with the face of a man understanding a test was oral after all. Emily stared as though a live creature had leapt from the purse, her expression misfired through denial anger and the grief reserved for a plan that just died. I let the facts stand unaided for one heartbeat more, then quietly enough to be surgical. You wanted everyone to see something, Emily. I hope they did. Applause started at the far side, hesitant, grateful, and gathered courage as it crossed the room. It wasn't for me. It was for relief. People clapped for the feeling of a floor returning underfoot. Emily reached for the ring, then thought better of it. She could feel the eyes. This is a misunderstanding, she managed syllables, hunting a place to hide. If you believe a theft occurred, I offered we can call the police now. We can make statements together. No, she said too fast, the way a door slams when a house settles. It's fine. Then there's another matter, I said. Your apology. Here. It takes talent to apologize well in public. It takes character to mean it. Emily stared at the ring. The room waited with the patience of a jury. I'm sorry, she said at last, voice the size of a pin, for accusing you. She swallowed. For planning to. I nodded, not absolution, but record. With a folded napkin, I lifted the ring and placed it in her palm. Be careful with what you hide, I said. It finds daylight. Sound seeped back a teaspoon at a time, a chair's small knee, a glass set down, a breath released. The quartet decided to be brave and finish the measure it had abandoned. The floor manager exhaled like a stagehand who had survived opening night. Joyce met my eyes and inclined her head as to an older rulebook. I thanked Ben quietly. Courage is a service, I told him. He nodded as if someone had just named his job. I gathered my shawl. People moved aside without admitting they had. At the threshold, I looked once not at Emily, who stood like a statue no city had ordered, but at my son. His eyes were wet with a complicated grief, for his wife, for his mother, for the year we'd all wasted performing. I lifted 2 fingers the way I had from the bleachers in Little League. He lifted his. It wasn't victory, it was recognition. Out in the corridor, the air was cooler and smelled less like roses and more like truth. A volunteer hurried past with a tray of coffee cups, the mercy of porcelain. Downtown hummed beyond the glass, indifferent as cities are to private earthquakes. Behind me, a second smaller wave of applause lifted and fell. I didn't turn back. Grace faces forward. In the ladies' room under kinder lighting, I washed my hands and watched the water leave as if it were taking something I didn't need anymore. My face looked like my mother's around the mouth. I heard my husband say what he always said after difficult days on the bench, "Go on. You did right. Put the kettle on." Back in the lobby, a former student, now a man with courthouse hair, caught my elbow. "Mrs. Matthews," he said, voice low, "you taught us indoor voices." I didn't know they could do that. "Most useful tools are quiet," I said. He smiled like a verdict that had gone the right way. "Yes, ma'am." The elevator doors opened on a mirrored wall. For a breath, I saw the room as it had been a circle tightening a ring, speaking a city recalibrating. Savannah doesn't like spectacles. It prefers stories. Tonight, it had been given both, and it had chosen which one to keep. When the doors closed, I realized my hands were steady. The floor under me was steady. The story under me, a different one than Emily had planned, was steady. By the time I reached the street, the river wind had found its way up the block. It lifted the edge of my shawl, then put it back the way a friend will fix your collar without comment. A couple walked past with a dog who understood leashes. Somewhere a kitchen caught up to its orders. Somewhere else, a woman who had thought she could only be tall by standing on someone else learned she could also stand down. At the curb, a valet offered an umbrella I didn't need. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked in the voice of a city that has decided to be gentle. "Better than that," I said. He smiled a small local oath that civility still works. I stepped into the night with a purse that was only a purse again, and a name that felt correctly weighted in my mouth. Morning in Savannah is polite. Even scandal knocks. By breakfast, the city had let itself in. A neighbor texted a link with no caption, the most southern caption of all. The Savannah Morning News ran a careful headline with a cruel photo, the ring mid-roll, bright as a verdict. Lifestyle accounts stitched the moment into a minute accusation procedure, testimony the ring's soft kiss against linen, the relief applause, reputations edit faster than film. I brewed tea and watered the fern. I returned 2 calls from women who understood how expensive silence can be. "You were a cathedral," one said. I thanked her and asked about her azaleas. By noon, the gala board posted a neutral statement, regret the disruption, reviewing process. Between its lines marched the consequences. Emily had stepped back as chair. 2 sponsors redirected funds straight to programming. A third asked for a meeting that would not include her. The mayor's office kept out of print, but made a point of being photographed handing extra checks to the literacy director. Savannah knows how to speak without sentences. Daniel arrived at dusk, shoulders honest for the first time in months. We sat on my piazza while the day cooled into something forgivable. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't do it," I said. "I didn't stop it." He stared at the street. I thought if I stayed out of the current, it would go around us. "Currents don't honor neutrality," I said. "They take what isn't anchored." He nodded. "You weren't trying to humiliate her." "No, I was trying to keep the truth from drowning." He looked like the boy who used to hand me permission slips late and expect mercy. "What should I do?" "Hold your words still. Stop grading on intention. Judge the action." I could hear his father in my mouth. Justice doesn't need a gavel. Sometimes it just needs witnesses. The next morning, I wrote a note, slipped it into a small box with an empty velvet pouch, and tied it with a pale ribbon. I left it with the concierge at their building. "For next time you lose trust, not jewelry." Not a threat, a compass. Whether she read it as one was her business. Midweek, the board made official what the town already practiced. Emily was out. The director called and very gently asked if I'd advise the next chair purely on structure. I said yes, with 2 conditions: add 2 girls from Carver Village to the volunteer roster and pay Ben for the hours he spent being brave. We were going to ask you anyway, she said, which is how, you're among professionals. At the hardware store, where the air smells like competence, a woman behind me said, trimmed of gossip, I saw the video. Thank you. I bought picture hooks and went home by way of the river. Emily tried strategy, the second refuge after denial. A group email to the board leaned on template words, regret any discomfort in the spirit of moving forward. A private text to me called it a misunderstanding in bad lighting. The word lighting did too much work in that sentence. I didn't reply. There are silences that punish and silences that heal. You must know which one you're deploying. Her influencer friends posted lattes 2 neighborhoods away. A contractor postponed. A boutique rescinded a discount. Not cruelty, gravity. Community moving its weight off a wobbly chair. Friday, Daniel came again, hair uncombed, eyes clear. She said I made her look bad by not defending her. What did you say? That I'm done defending what I know is wrong. We let that sentence sit between us like a newborn and gave it air. In the kitchen, I cut pound cake. You can't fix much with cake, but you can hold a minute while a heart changes shape. He set his fork down. You weren't seeking revenge. I was seeking proportion. He nodded, learning how to agree with a truth that won't flatter him. Saturday brought the knock I'd expected. Emily stood without mascara or script, the pallor of someone who has met herself in a mirror. May I come in? She asked. Yes, I said. The first rule of a teacher, let the student into the room. We sat at the kitchen table that has survived every kind of conversation. She folded and unfolded her hands, then looked at a bowl of clementines as if mercy might have appeal. I'm sorry, she said, each word pulled on a string. Not like at the gala. I did it. I planned it. I wanted people to see you weren't perfect. I wanted your place. Yes, I said, naming is step 1. I don't know what happens to me, she whispered. It's like a heat. I think the only way to be tall is to stand on someone else. I hate that about me. That's a beginning, I said, hating it. She nodded. I stepped down. The contract's 2 gone. The brand is bruised. She huffed a laugh with no mirth. Everything is branding until it isn't. Everything is character until it is, I said, and slid the clementines closer. Eat. You won't hear yourself if your blood sugar is low. She smiled at the foolish wisdom of it and peeled one. The room filled with the smell of second chances. Will you tell me what to do? I'll tell you what not to do, I said. Don't perform goodness. Practice it. Don't ask to be forgiven in public before you ask to be different in private. She breathed out, shoulders losing the pageant's weight. Thank you, she said, and left with nothing in her hands, which is sometimes how you know a visit worked. By Monday, the board's new statement named only what mattered: the program, the children, the year ahead. Volunteer shifts, a donation link. No villains, no saints, just the work. Ben received a proper check and a note from the director. Courage is a service. He taped it to the back of his time card. Joyce recruited the 2 girls from Carver Village. At their first meeting, one ran the pledge board like a concert master and grinned when I told her she'd done it cleaner than I ever had. Daniel texted less and visited more. We're rebuilding on what we actually do, he said. Slower. Real. Real holds, I said. A few days later at the grocery, a stranger squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for doing it clean." I accepted the thanks and passed the cart. A city is not changed by applause. It is changed by the quiet things you do when no one is filming. That evening, I put the empty velvet pouch back in its drawer and smoothed the ribbon with my thumb. I thought of the ring's soft roll of a room finding its floor again, of applause that wasn't for me at all, but for relief. I slept like a woman whose weight had returned to the chair that would hold. In the morning, the fern needed water again. So did the city. I poured what I could into both. I didn't destroy her, I said to the kitchen, testing the sentence for size. I let her destroy herself. The room agreed. Savannah doesn't slam doors. It lets them close with a click you hear 3 porches over. Emily left that way. No announcement. No last post. Just weekday logistics. A moving truck at 9. A plant forgotten on a balcony rail. A form signed with a pen that had run a little dry. At the coffee shop, someone said Jacksonville for a while, the way this town spares itself adjectives. Savannah doesn't say exile. It says away. The gala board did what steady committees do. After a storm, they put the mission in the middle and fastened it there. Joyce recruited 2 girls from Carver Village to the planning circle. The younger one ran the pledge board like a concertmaster at the next fundraiser and grinned when I told her she'd done it cleaner than I ever had. The new chair asked me for notes and took them as if they were recipes. Seat the elders where they can be seen without being used, I said. Expect good behavior and provide it when others forget how. She wrote both down, underlining provide. I didn't see Daniel for a week, which is how long some men need to decide who they are going to be. When he finally came by, he looked like himself, and not like a press release sleep, caught up shoulders, honest. We sat on the piazza because that's where truths in our family prefer to be said. He watched the street a while the way his father used to when he was building a verdict. Then I thought silence would keep peace, he said. But silence only protects cruelty. There it was, the sentence a son lays on the table when he's ready to be a man. I let it sit long enough to cool. Now you understand your father's favorite saying, I answered, giving him the line that built our house. Justice doesn't need a gavel. Sometimes it just needs witnesses. He nodded and I watched the words land where they could do work. I told Emily I'm not moving, he said. I told her I'll help if she wants to be different, but I won't help her pretend. That's help, I said. We made supper because grief wants an activity. He chopped onions badly. I corrected his elbow. The kitchen smelled like a life that had chosen to keep going. While the pasta boiled, he told me which contracts they'd lost and which might return if they delivered more service than story. We're rebuilding on what we actually do, he said. It'll be slower. He smiled, surprised to mean it. It'll be real. On Sunday, I sat in our usual pew and watched a boy I'd taught hold the door for an elderly man as if it were a minor sacrament. The sermon noted the difference between intention and repentance. In the fellowship hall afterward, a woman I didn't know squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for doing it clean." I accepted the thanks and passed the plate of deviled eggs. A city does not change because it applauds. It changes because the right people keep passing the right plates. Midweek, a small envelope arrived with no return address. Inside a card, in a hand that had learned to be plain, I am looking for a counselor and a job without cameras. Thank you for not making me perform my apology. E. I put it in the drawer with the velvet pouch and thought humility, when it comes, rarely knocks loudly. By August, the literacy program had a wait list we were proud of, earned with new tutors, and a budget that told the truth. Ben cashed a check that said courage is a service in the memo line and taped the director's note to the back of his time card. I saw him once by the hotel's service entrance. He lifted a hand as if saluting a fellow conspirator and went on with his work. Sometimes in the grocery aisle, someone would stop me, an old student, a stranger who had read the local paper, and say, "God bless you." I would nod and ask about their grandchild's spelling, and we would both leave lighter. Other times, I'd pass a mirror and glimpse my husband's mouth on my face and hear him say what he said after each decision that asked too much of us. Go on. You did right. Put the kettle on. Daniel visited more and texted less. He told me about a crew leader he'd promoted because the man showed up, and about a client who wrote a letter instead of a review because letters still felt more human. He didn't apologize for the new pace. The work apologized for itself by being well done. He hesitated on the piazza one night, then added, "She's calmer on the phone. She said she'll interview at a nonprofit, entry level. She didn't ask me to call anyone. I told her I was proud of her for not asking." That was right. We ate on the piazza by the lamp that had belonged to my mother. Cicadas sawed the dark into manageable pieces. "I don't know what happens to us," he said. "You don't need to," I said. "Just keep the floor under you honest." He laughed in that new way that didn't apologize for existing. "You should write a book," he said. I did, I said. I taught school. When he left, I stayed to watch the square do its nightly theater, a dog walker, a couple who had fought, and then remembered lunch plans, a boy on a bicycle who would be a man by Christmas in some other state. I thought about loss and the forms it takes, about the parts we edit out to make a story fit and the parts we keep because they keep us, about Emily's card and the quiet ways a person can pivot if they learn to stand without a stage. I looked down at my hands, older than they feel capable of more than anyone expects. My wedding band shone the way old gold does, polished by 1,000 small, honest tasks. In its circle, I could see the lamp's reflection, the piazza's slats, a narrow strip of sky. Nothing in that ring was new, and nothing about it needed to be. Savannah kept breathing. The river carried and returned, carried and returned. Somewhere across town, a woman made a hard phone call and slept through the night for the first time in a year. Somewhere else, a young server wrote 8 brave words on a slip of paper and handed them to someone who could use them. I have learned to love these smaller victories as much as the ones people clap for. A city is held up by quiet things done when no one is filming. So when I tell you the story, I end it here, not with glitter, not with noise, but with the line the night at the DeSoto wrote for me, and then waited patient and exacting while I earned it. Diamonds shine for a while, dignity shines forever. If my story reminded you that grace always wins over spite, please subscribe and share this with another strong woman in your life, because some lessons are best learned in public.